The Tao of Self-Confidence, episode 781. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. Well, hello friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have an amazing lady on the show today. She's a blogger and also the co-host of the Tea Talk podcast, and I'm really excited to have her on and share her story with us today on self-confidence. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Alyssa Marie. Alyssa, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Hi, Sheena. Thank you so much for having me on as a fellow podcaster. This is actually really exciting to be on someone else's podcast. This is my first time, so I'm really excited. As you mentioned, I am a fashion blogger. And that's really how I started, I guess, my online presence. But as I have grown online, I've really tapped into what I think brings me the most joy, which is not just sharing fashion, but really more than that, which is my hope on my blog and on my Instagram is to empower women to look good and feel good about themselves. So I really think that when you come to my page, you can expect not only fashion inspiration, but really a place where you can, I think, encourage yourself to be vulnerable and join a community of women who really uplift and support one another.
Thanks for sharing that. And Alyssa, what's your cultural background?
Yeah, so I am Chinese American. Both my parents are Chinese. My mom is actually an immigrant from the southern region of China, but my dad was born in the US. So I have a very split identity in the sense that I very much feel the Chinese side of my cultural identity, but also very much the American side, not just because I grew up in America, but because my dad was born here and he actually doesn't speak any Chinese, whereas my mom, is obviously her native language is Cantonese. So I grew up in a very interesting household where both parts of my identity were very much, I guess, real in my household. So that definitely impacted, I think, how I came into understanding my own identity.
Thanks for sharing that. And what would be your favorite self-confidence quote?
I think that when it comes to self-confidence, I guess it's not really a quote, but I think it's more about mantras and the daily affirmations that you give yourself every time you look at yourself in the mirror, or, when you encounter challenges in your life. The way that you speak to yourself, I think, is ultimately one of the most important kind of conversations that you can have. A lot of times we're super quick to be able to give affirmations to our friends, our family, our loved ones. When it comes to ourselves, I think that a lot of us struggle to be kind to ourselves. So for me, it's really about waking up and pumping myself up, being my own hype woman. So saying Alyssa, you can do this. You got this. You're amazing. You've done hard things in your life, and this is no different. And it's those positive mantras of really just, pumping myself up and really reminding myself of my own power and my own strength each and every day that I think builds my own self-confidence.
Thanks for sharing those mantras. And in your own words, how do you define self-confidence?
I think self-confidence is an inner fire that can't be put out. And so it's when you walk in the room, you know that the way that you feel about yourself is not dependent upon anyone else but yourself. It's almost that, intangible feeling, when you look at somebody, you just know they're confident because it truly comes from a place of understanding your self-worth and loving who you are and accepting who you are and your flaws and acknowledging your strengths, but where you may also come short, and developing such a strong awareness that you can't be sort of shaken by anything outside. And for me, it's like a sense of inner peace of just knowing this is who I am, and I feel really good about that. And I can move through this world without feeling like I'm less than because of the way that somebody might treat me or the way that somebody might think of me, because all of that is seriously irrelevant. It's really about, the relationship that you have with yourself, that unshakable understanding of who you are on an internal level.
Thanks for sharing that great definition. And Alyssa, what was your life like before you discovered self-confidence?
I think for me and a lot of women growing up, my confidence was not there. I think it had a lot to do with my environment growing up in a community where I was pretty much the only Asian girl. And so I always felt this sense of otherness and felt very different, just clearly by the way that I looked. And given that I was also not like Chinese enough, I didn't speak fluently in Chinese, and then I was clearly not, my American white peers. So it was always just this sense of like, I just need to do enough to blend in so that I don't come off as different. And because I spent so much of my life, I think, trying to blend in and really fit the mold of what I felt like my environment needed me to be, I always never felt good enough. And so it was not until college that I really discovered, I think, my power and understood that who I am is not negotiable. It's not something that I need to negotiate with others, right? My identity is based off of me, and I get to decide how I feel about who I am. And it's not going to be something that is dependent on what other people think. So I think that once I realized where I had agency in the way that I felt about myself and the way that I moved through this world, it just kind of opened up this door for me of like, just all these opportunities for me to, I think, thrive, because I started to recognize that I was in control of my outcomes and I didn't need to rely on other people to kind of dictate that for me.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'm glad how you mentioned that, you decide, like, you decide to be who you are, and that's non-negotiable. And, if we just treat it like that, like, to be our true selves is non-negotiable, then we can just be free of like what other people think of us, be free of like the crazy thoughts we have about ourselves. And, we can just go out there and take action on the things you want. And like you mentioned, like opportunities started popping up. You're in control of your life versus like the thoughts in your head or your fears or whatever it may be. And I think that's great. They're able to discover that and, see what happened and share the outcomes that came out of it because of what you decided. A lot of people feel like being them true selves is not enough and they have to be somebody else. And then it really hurts them, and because they feel like they're trapped. And, we just have to realize, like, life is short. Like, there's only one of us in this world, and it would just make more sense to be our true selves versus trying to be somebody that we truly can't be, or we know we shouldn't be. And, to the woman who's listening to your episode, she may be in her own journey to self-confidence. What would be that one tip you give to her?
Yeah, I think it's like, again, going back to what I said, it's like waking up and deciding that you are enough and you are worthy simply because you exist, and that your worthiness and that your, who you are just as is literally all you need. And I think when you start to truly believe that, that mindset shift can unlock this level of like freedom and liberation that is like so incredible. It's definitely a work in progress for me, but I would have to say that who I am now, approaching my 30th birthday pretty soon versus, 10 years ago is just a world of difference, because I've decided that I don't need to negotiate my worth with other people, that's something that is completely up to me. And if I do feel the need to negotiate my worth, then those are the people that I don't want on my team. Those are the people that aren't, on the same sort of level and vibe that I'm looking for. So personally speaking, I think, if I can just impart any wisdom, it's really just is owning who you are and not being apologetic about your strengths, your talents, who you are, and walking and moving in this world with that confidence of knowing like, this is who I am and I'm damn proud. And that, kind of just comes from within. And I think when you reach that point of like, I don't need to negotiate my worth with others, it just kind of, it allows this level of freedom and for you to like live without burden of having to constantly wonder if you're enough for other people. So again, it's a process, but I would say start to look inward and really start those mantras, like look at the amazing things that you've accomplished and give yourself credit and start repeating those mantras every single day, especially when it comes to hard things. The more that you can, I think, practice those mindsets, the more it just becomes who you are.
Thanks for sharing those great tips. And if our listeners wanted to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do and check out some of your work, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are on Instagram and you'd love to stay connected, my Instagram handle is always Alyssa Marie. And there I share obviously lots of photos on my feed, but also on my stories, I like to show other snippets of my life outside of blogging. I like to showcase, what it's like to be a woman who works in the tech industry as well. And sort of, behind the scenes of, what I do in my career. So I think that's really fun for me too, is to empower women to step into roles that they may also not feel ready for, because that was something that I definitely grappled with. So feel free to follow me there. I also have a website, a blog, which is the same as my handle. So it's alwaysalysamarie.com. And then if you'd love to learn more about myself, I have a podcast with my partner, Stacy, who is also featured on your podcast. And ours is called Tea Talk Podcast with Alyssa and Stacy. And you can find us at teatalkpodcast.com or Tea Talk _podcast on Instagram.
Thanks for sharing that. To our listeners, if you want to connect with Alyssa, you can also head on over to the taoofselfconfidence.com and search for Alyssa's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And really just want to thank Alyssa today for taking the time to share her story and tips with us on self-confidence. So thank you so much, Alyssa.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Sheena, for this opportunity. It was really a pleasure connecting with you.
Not a problem. It was really great having you on the show. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of the Tao of Self-Confidence. Get your free self-talk tape for building self-confidence by visiting our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits.